Igbo adage says, Onye wetara oji, wetara ndu. He who brings kola nut brings life. But what happens when the price of kola nut is set too high for even life itself to afford? Before we begin, what if the man your father was trying to chase away was the exact same kind of man your father used to be? What if the list your father wrote was not about tradition at all, but about fear? And what if love, quiet and stubborn, decided to show up anyway? Stay with this story, because it will surprise you. There are some things in a village that spread faster than fire. A death, a scandal, and a bride price list from Chief Okafor. By 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, the news had already crossed 3 streets, 2 compounds, and 1 church. By 8 a.m., people were standing outside the chief's compound, pretending to greet each other, but really waiting for someone to read the list out loud. Nobody wanted to be the last to know. In this village, information was currency. Adaize Okafor was 27 years old, educated, and the kind of beautiful that made older women click their tongues and say Chukwu Mela. She had finished her degree in Enugu, came back home, and opened a small tailoring shop on the main road. She was not a girl anymore. She was a full woman, and her father knew it. Chief Okafor had called a family meeting the night before. He sat at the head of the table, his red cap firm on his head, and placed a folded paper in the center. Nobody touched it. The paper sat there like something dangerous. I have written the bride price for my daughter, he said slowly. Any man who wants Adaize will follow this list. No negotiation, no begging, no story. Mama Okafor looked at the paper and said nothing. She already knew what was inside. She had argued with her husband about it the night before and lost. Auntie Ngozi picked up the paper first. She was the chief's younger sister and had the energy of someone who was always either starting something or finishing it. She unfolded the list slowly, like she was opening a Christmas gift. Then her eyes went wide. Chineke, she whispered. The list had 25 items. 25. A cow, 2 goats, 10 tubers of yam, bottles of palm wine, cases of hot drinks, fabric for the entire family, jewelry for the mother, shoes, a generator, a motorcycle, and at the very bottom, written in capital letters, 1 million naira cash. Auntie Ngozi dropped the paper like it had burned her fingers. Brother, are you selling your daughter or are you building a shopping mall? Chief Okafor did not smile. She is worth it. Any man who cannot pay it does not deserve her. Nobody argued with him that night. By noon the next day, the list had been photographed and shared on 3 WhatsApp groups. By 4 p.m., it had reached people who did not even live in the village. By evening, 2 suitors had quietly packed their bags and left. A third sent a text message that simply said, I wish Adaize well. The village was laughing. Some people felt sorry. Some people felt it was right. Some were just entertained. But one man had not run. He had read the list 3 times, folded it, and put it in his short pocket. And that was the beginning of everything.
Emeka Dike read the list 3 times. The first time, his eyes went quiet. The second time, he scratched his head. The third time, he folded the paper, placed it in his shirt pocket, and went back to sanding the chair he was working on. His hands did not shake. His face did not change. He simply returned to work like a man who had just read the weather report and decided to go outside anyway. His apprentice, a teenage boy called Chidi, was watching him from the corner of the workshop. Oga, Chidi said carefully, don't read the list. Emeka said without stopping his work. And go run. Emeka looked up at the boy. Run go where? Chidi blinked twice. Everybody don dey run since morning. Now only you remain for this village wey still calm. Emeka set down his sandpaper. He looked around his workshop. The wood shavings on the floor, the half-finished furniture, the smell of sawdust and varnish that had soaked into every wall. He had built this place with his own hands. He had started with nothing and made something real. He understood the relationship between patience and results. He was 29 years old, Not tall, not short. His hands were always dusty, and his face carried the kind of calm that made people either trust him completely or fail to understand him. He had grown up in that same village. He had buried his father at 21. He had built his carpentry business from scratch with no help and no shortcuts. He had also known Adaize for 2 years. Not from a distance, they had spoken, laughed, disagreed. Once, she had come to his workshop and asked him to build a display shelf for her tailoring shop. He built it in 3 days and refused to collect the full payment. She had argued with him about it for 24 minutes, hands on her waist, voice sharp. That was the day something shifted in him. "Emeka, you are a very stubborn person," she had said, eyes bright with frustration and something else underneath it. "And you are the first woman who has ever called me stubborn and made it feel like a good thing," he had replied. She had walked out of his workshop trying hard not to smile. He had watched her go and made a quiet decision inside his chest. Not a loud decision, not a dramatic one, just a small, firm, permanent one. Now he pulled the list out of his pocket again. 1 million naira, a cow, generator, motorcycle, 25 items total. He did not have 1 million naira. He did not have a cow. What he had was a working workshop, a small piece of land his late father had left him, 2 completed contracts already paid, and 1 more contract almost finished. He picked up his phone and called his older brother in Lagos. "Guy," he said simply, "I need help, no be small thing." His brother paused. "Na woman?" "Na the right woman," Emeka said. There was a pause. Then his brother laughed, a deep, warm laugh that carried years of brotherly love inside it. "Send me the list," he said. Emeka sent it. His brother called back in exactly 2 minutes. "Emeka, this chief won't kill somebody." "I know." "You sure about this girl?" Emeka looked out the workshop door. The evening was settling orange and quiet over the village rooftops. "Very sure," he said. "Okay," his brother said. "Come to Lagos this weekend. We go plan everything." Emeka smiled for the first time that whole day. He put down his phone, picked up his sandpaper, and returned to the chair. What nobody in that village knew yet, not Aunty Ngozi, not Chief Okafor, and not even Adaize herself, was that a plan was already forming. A quiet plan, the most dangerous kind. Adaize did not know Emeka had read the list. She sat in her tailoring shop on Wednesday morning, pretending to sew, but really watching the streets from the corner of her eye. The shop was neat and bright, fabrics folded on shelves, a mannequin by the door wearing a half-finished lace dress, a small fan turning slowly in the corner. It was her own space. She had built it herself and she was proud of it. Her best friend Shade was sitting across from her on a low stool, eating chin-chin from a small bag and talking with the enthusiasm of someone who had not been asked to give an opinion but was giving it anyway. "So, your papa done officially run every man away," Shade said, crunching loudly. 25 items, 1 million cash, and your father is not a normal person. "Shade, keep your voice down." "Me? Keep my voice down?" Shade pointed at her own chest. "Your father just put a price tag on you that is more expensive than some fairly used cars, and you are telling me to lower my voice?" Adaize put down the fabric she was holding. Outside, a woman walked past carrying a baby on her back. A motorcycle raised dust on the red road. Normal life, and yet nothing felt normal. "He means well," Adaize said quietly. "He just has a very strange way of showing it." Shade said, in the tone of someone who disagreed but had chosen mercy. Adaize was quiet. She had asked herself the same question Shade was implying for 3 years now. Was her father protecting her or imprisoning her? Were the two things always different? She genuinely did not know. She was 27. She had watched younger cousins get married. She had sewn wedding dresses for 4 of her closest friends. Every time she pinned lace onto someone else's back, she felt something pressing against her ribs that she could not name. And then there was Emeka. She had not planned him. 2 years ago, she needed a shelf. He built it. Simple. except she had gone back 3 more times after that, once for a chair, once to complain that the shelf color was too dark, and once with no real reason at all, pretending she had forgotten her measuring tape there. She had not forgotten her measuring tape. He had been too polite to say so. He had simply handed it to her with a straight face. There was something about the way Emeka moved through life. He was not loud. He did not brag. He did not need the room to notice him. He just worked, carefully, quietly, consistently. And when he looked at her, it was the kind of look that said, "I see you properly," not just the face, the whole person. She had never fully confessed any of this to Shade, but Shade was sharp. It be like say you dey think about somebody specific, Shade said, tilting her head like a curious bird. "I am not thinking about anybody. Your ear don't turn red." Adaize covered her ear with her hand before she could stop herself. Then she hissed and dropped her hand. "Shade." Shade grinned wide. "Who is he?" Before Adaize could find a safe answer, her mother walked into the shop. Mama Okafor closed the door behind her slowly. Her face was not angry. It was the face of a woman who has been carrying something heavy for too long and finally has to set it down somewhere. "Ada," she said softly, "your father has a visitor coming this Friday." Adaize went still. What kind of visitor? Mama Okafor pressed her lips together. "A rich man from Lagos. His name is Tunde Balogun." Shade stopped chewing. Adaize felt the pressing in her ribs again, but this time it felt like a door slowly closing. Not slammed, just quietly, firmly swinging shut. What she did not know was that the same evening her mother delivered that news, a carpenter in a dusty workshop was boarding a bus to Lagos. Love and money were both moving at the same time, and only one of them would arrive first.
Tunde Balogun arrived in a white SUV. That alone was enough to make Aunty Ngozi walk out of the kitchen with her apron still on and stand at the compound gate with her hand shading her eyes and her mouth open. He was 34, well-dressed in an expensive kaftan, Lagos light-skinned in the way that good living and regular facials produce. He came with a driver, a personal assistant, and a cooler full of drinks. He greeted Chief Okafor in Yoruba, switched smoothly to English, and then tried a careful Igbo. "No, sir," and Chief Okafor's entire face opened like a window on a dry morning. "This young man has home training," Chief Okafor said, to no one in particular. Aunty Ngozi had decided she liked Tunde within the first 5 minutes. She offered him 3 different drinks before he had even fully sat down. Adaize sat in the parlor, back straight, hands folded, wearing a yellow Ankara that her mother had ironed twice. She watched Tunde with the careful fairness of someone trying very hard not to have already made up their mind. He was not ugly, he was not rude, he spoke confidently and he had good manners. He ran a real estate company in Lagos and came from a family in Ibadan. He had come through a connection, a friend of Aunty Ngozi naturally, who had mentioned Adaize's name at a dinner party. "You're even more beautiful in person," Tunde said to her, with a smile that was clean and warm. "You don't do this before," Shade would have whispered immediately if she had been in the room. Adaize smiled back. "Thank you." Tunde glanced at the frame certificate on the wall, her degree from Enugu. Fashion and textile design? Tailoring and design, yes, I run my own shop. That's impressive. I actually need someone to manage staff uniforms for 3 of my company branches. He said it casually, but it was not casual at all. It was an opening, a door, a future dressed in nice fabric. Chief Okafor from his chair watched the whole exchange with the face of a man watching his favorite football team score. Mama Okafor brought out kola nuts. Prayers were said. The visit stretched pleasantly into the evening. Food appeared. Laughter happened. Tunde told a story about a business trip to Abuja that made even Mama Okafor smile. By 6 p.m., when the white SUV pulled out of the compound, Chief Okafor was humming an old song under his breath, the kind of humming that meant he was happy, deeply, quietly happy. He stopped outside Adaize's bedroom door. "That is a serious man," Chief Okafor said. Adaize looked at her father. "He seems fine, Papa." "Fine?" Chief Okafor repeated the word like it was too small. "He is more than fine. He said he has already looked at the list. He wants to come back next week with his family."
Adaeze nodded. Her father left. She sat on her bed and looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. She scrolled to a name she had not texted in 3 weeks. She stared at it. Emeka. She typed, "Hope you are doing fine." She stared at the words, then deleted them, then put the phone face down on the bed. 300 kilometers away, in a small flat in Sulureli, a phone lit up briefly, then went dark. Emeka picked it up, expecting a message. The screen showed nothing. He stared at it for 1 extra second, then set it back down and returned to the notebook open on the kitchen table. But his eyes went back to the phone one more time. The second visit from Tunde happened on a Saturday. This time, he brought his mother. Mama Tunde was a tall Yoruba woman with a gele tied high and proud, gold earrings, and a smile that was warm, but also thoroughly examining everything in the room. She sat next to Adaze on the sofa and spoke to her son mostly in Yoruba, but every few sentences she turned and studied Adaze carefully, the way an experienced market woman assesses fabric before committing to a price. "She is quiet," Mama Tunde observed, to no one specifically. "She is thoughtful," Mama Okafor replied, which was the refined version of exactly the same observation. The two mothers understood each other completely. They had both raised children. They both knew that what was being said and what was being meant were two different things. After the formal visit, as the afternoon wound down, Tunde found a moment to walk with Adaze to the side of the compound. He faced her directly. "I like you," he said. "No performance, no extra words. I know this is fast, but I'm a straightforward person. I know what I want, and I'm willing to fulfill every single item on that list." Adaze looked at him. He was serious. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had worked for things and gotten them and expected this to be no different. "That's a very big commitment," she said carefully. "It's just money," he said. "I have it. Your father named the price. I'll pay it." Just money. She repeated those 2 words inside her head on the walk back to the house, and something in her chest turned over quietly. That evening, she sat in her mother's kitchen peeling yam while Mama Okafor stirred the soup pot. The fire crackled. The generator hummed from the neighbor's compound. Outside, a child was laughing about something. Normal sounds. Real life. "Mama," Adaze said, "Tunde says he will pay everything on the list." "I know," Mama Okafor said. "Papa is very happy. Very. So what do you think?" Mama Okafor stirred the pot slowly. She did not answer immediately. She let the question sit in the warm air of the kitchen. "What do you think?" she said finally. Adaze looked at the yam in her hands. "I think Tunde is a good man. I think he is serious. I think he would probably take good care of me." She paused. "But I feel nothing when he speaks to me. Nothing moves inside me. He says all the right things, and I feel like I am in a job interview." Mama Okafor turned off the flame beneath the pot. She turned and looked at her daughter fully. "You feel something for someone else," she said. It was not a question. Adaze did not answer, but her silence answered for her. Mama Okafor turned back to the pot. She was quiet for so long that Adaze thought she was not going to say anything more. Then very softly, "Your father did not write that list for Tunde, Ada. He wrote it to close a door on someone else." Adaze's hand stopped moving. "Who?" "The carpenter, Emeka Dike. He came to this compound 6 weeks ago, quietly, in the proper way. He told your father he had feelings for you and wanted to know the family's process." She paused. "Your father sent him away before he had finished talking, and 2 days later, that list appeared." The kitchen was so silent that the sound of a moth hitting the light bulb was loud. Adaze stood up slowly. The yam sat forgotten in her lap. And in that single moment, the entire story rearranged itself inside her head. In Lagos, Emeka was working faster than he ever had in his life. He was staying with his older brother Obinna in a flat in Surulere. Obinna was an engineer, steady income, a wife named Chioma, 2 children, a life assembled carefully, brick by brick, over many years. He was 10 years older than Emeka and had the quiet confidence of a man who had already made most of his mistakes and learned from all of them. He looked at the bride price list again on Emeka's phone screen. He scrolled down again. He kept scrolling. "Okay," Obinna said finally. "We treat this like a project. We break it down." They sat at the kitchen table after dinner. Chioma had brought them tea, looked at the list herself, shaking her head slowly, and said, "Emeka, that girl better be worth every single item on this list." "She is, Auntie," Emeka had said without any drama. Chioma had looked at him for a moment, then nodded, satisfied, and gone to bed. Obina divided the list into 3 categories: things that needed straight cash, things that could be sourced cheaply if you knew the right people, and goods like the motorcycle and generator that could be bought at trade prices through the right contacts. Emeka had savings, not a fortune, but genuine money. He had started putting something away every month since he was 22, even in the lean month, because his father had told him once, "Onye were ego were oku." He who has money has a voice. He had believed that and lived by it. He also had money from 2 recently completed contracts. One was classroom furniture for a primary school, one was beds and wardrobes for a small hotel in Awoka. Both had been paid in full. He had not touched that money yet because he had been waiting, though he had not known for what exactly until now. He opened his notebook and added everything up. It was not ₦1,000,000, but it was not embarrassing either. With Obina's contribution and one final pending contract, a church building project that was almost done, the number became something real. The motorcycle, Obina said, scrolling his phone. Your cousin in Onitsha, he deals in fairly used bikes. I'll call him tomorrow, Emeka said. The cow. There's a farmer 3 streets behind Chief Okafor's compound. His name is Ezike. You remember him? Tall man, sells groundnut oil also. Yes, I'll reach his son today. They went through the list item by item. Palm wine sourced from a trusted local tapper, yams from a cooperative in the village, the fabric purchased wholesale from Aba, the drinks from a distributor Obina knew. Each item crossed off one by one like a soldier walking through a field removing obstacles. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. The fan turned overhead, the street outside was quiet. Emeka looked at the remaining gap, the cash amount. 6 weeks, Obina said. If that church contract pays when they said it will, 6 weeks. Emeka nodded. He picked up his phone. He looked at Adiaze's name. He had not messaged her in weeks. He typed something, deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Then he typed something simple and sent it before he could think anymore. I'm working on something. I haven't forgotten anything. In a village 300 kilometers away, a phone lit up on a bedside table. Adiaze had just come from the kitchen. She had just learnt about her father sending Emeka away. Her eyes were still adjusting to what that meant. She picked up the phone. She read the message once, then again. Then she sat down slowly on her bed and held the phone against her chest with both hands. She did not know about the notebook. She did not know about the kitchen table in Surulere or the list being broken into 3 columns. She did not know about the cousin in Onitsha or the farmer called Ezike, but she believed him. And belief, even before proof arrives, is never a small thing.
Aunty Ngozi had a particular gift. It was not a spiritual gift, it was the social kind. The ability to take one true thing, mix it with a little imagination and a little assumption, and produce something that could damage a relationship in under 10 minutes. She did not do it with malice exactly. She did it the way some people breathe, naturally, consistently, without thinking about the consequences. It started on a Thursday evening. She was walking down the corridor to get water from the kitchen when she passed Adiaze's room and heard her niece laughing on the phone. Not the careful, polite laugh that Adiaze used with Tunde, measured and appropriate like a woman on her best behavior. This was the other laugh, the real one, the kind that comes from somewhere deeper and cannot be faked or rehearsed. Aunty Ngozi stopped walking. She heard the name, "You're so crazy, Emeka," followed by more laughter. That was all she needed. By Friday morning, she had gone to Chief Okafor and reported that Adiaze was secretly communicating with the carpenter behind the family's back. By Friday afternoon, she had mentioned to 2 aunties who had come to visit that things seemed to be going on between Adiaze and that workshop boy. By Friday evening, the story had collected details that Aunty Ngozi had never actually said, but had somehow now lived inside it anyway. Chief Okafor called Adiaze to the parlor. He was in his big chair, red cap on, posture stiff, face carrying the particular expression of a man who has decided he's very disappointed and wants you to know it immediately. "Is it true," he said before she had even fully entered the room. "What is true, Papa? That you have been having secret meetings with that carpenter, that you are going behind your family." Adiaze felt the heat rise in her face. "I spoke to him on the phone. We talked. That is everything. You are entertaining a man I have rejected." "You rejected him without telling me, Papa." Her voice was quiet, controlled, but every word had weight. "I am 27 years old, Adiaze.
I have a degree, I run my own business, I support myself. I am not a child, Papa, and I am not a piece of furniture that you arrange where it is convenient. She took a breath. You do not get to decide who I feel something for. The parlor was completely silent. Mama Okafor stood in the doorway, watching without moving. Chief Okafor rose slowly from his chair. When he spoke again, his voice was very low, which was always more serious than when he was loud. If that boy comes to this compound without completing that list, every item, every kobo accounted for, I will send him away in front of the whole village, every neighbor, every family member, anyone who wants to watch. Adiaze looked at her father for a long, steady moment. Then she turned and walked to her room without another word. She sat on her bed and called Sade. Sade, everything is burning. Which fire? Tunde fire or Emeka fire? My father just threatened to humiliate Emeka publicly if he comes here without the full list, and Aunty Ngozi is the one who started all of it. Sade was quiet for 1 second. Then call Emeka right now. Tell him everything. I don't want him to rush and make mistakes. Adiaze, call the man now, she called. Emeka picked up on the second ring. She told him everything. Aunty Ngozi, the parlor, her father's exact words, the public humiliation threat. She spoke calmly and completely, the way you tell someone important news when you want them to have all the facts. Emeka listened without interrupting once. When she finished, there was a pause. Then, how long before Tunde expects an answer from your family? 3 weeks, maybe 4. Another pause. Okay, he said. Okay, that is all you are saying? Ada, the way he said her name, 2 quiet syllables, made something in her chest go completely still. Trust me. Give me the time. She wanted to ask how much time. She wanted to ask if he was certain. She had 100 questions lined up behind her teeth, but she only said, don't let my father embarrass you. He won't, Emeka said simply. He hung up. She sat in the silence of her room with the phone in her hand, and 300 kilometers away, a man who had just been threatened opened his notebook, picked up his pen, and started working faster.
It was Malam Haruna who changed everything. He was the old neighbor who had lived in the compound directly behind Chief Okafor's for 30 years. A retired school teacher originally from Kano. He spoke in slow, careful English with a gentle Hausa accent and spent his evenings under a mango tree in his compound, drinking zobo and watching the world with the patient eyes of a man who had seen how most stories end. He had watched the entire drama from over the back fence without saying a word to anyone. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, after the church crowd had thinned and the village had settled into its lazy midday silence, Malam Haruna knocked on Chief Okafor's gate. Chief Okafor came out in his Sunday wrapper, surprised. He had not been expecting anyone. Haruna, bakadayini. Nagode, Malam Haruna replied, touching his chest briefly. Sit with me for a small time. I have something I want to say to you. They sat on a wooden bench outside the gate. A goat walked past. The sun was high and clean. Malam Haruna folded his hands and looked at the ground for a moment before he spoke. You know I have been your neighbor for 30 years, he said. Yes. So you know I am not the type of man who puts his mouth in another person's matter without reason. Chief Okafor nodded slowly. He was listening now. I knew your wife, Malam Haruna said, before she became your wife. I knew her family also. I was a young teacher in those days, new to this village. I used to see her at the market. Chief Okafor said nothing. Her father set a bride price for her too, Malam Haruna continued. I remember those days. You were not a rich man then. You drove a motorcycle. You sold building materials from a small roadside store that you had opened with money borrowed from your uncle. The air between the two men thickened. Her father wanted a man from Onitsha for her, a big importer, a man with connections and a large compound. And yet, you kept coming. You came once, they sent you away. You came again, you came a third time. He paused. In the end, you sold a piece of land your uncle left you just to complete the bride price. Chief Okafor sat very still. Who told you this? He said quietly. Your wife, Malam Haruna said simply. Many years ago, you two had a big quarrel. I think it was about money, as these quarrels usually are. And she came and sat in my compound for 1 hour, crying. She told me the whole story of how you had fought for her. He looked at Chief Okafor directly. She said, that man went through fire to marry me. That is why I cannot be angry with him for long. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full
full of years, full of a younger man's stubbornness, full of a father-in-law who had also once tried to say no. "You were that carpenter boy once," he said. "Exactly that. Young, not rich, with nothing but determination and a heart that refused to accept rejection." He stood up slowly, brushing his kaftan with both hands. "And some man, somewhere, looked at you the exact same way you are now looking at this Emeka Dike." He said nothing else. "Sanu da iki," he offered gently. "Take care with your walk," and walked back to his compound. Chief Okafor sat on that bench alone for 1 full hour. The goat came back and stood near him for a while, then left. A child ran past chasing a ball. The world moved around him while he sat still. When he finally went inside, Mama Okafor was in the kitchen. He stood in the doorway and looked at her. She looked back. She could read his face the way only decades of marriage teaches a person. She could see the wall inside him developing a crack. "Why didn't you tell me that Emeka came here?" she asked, voice gentle. He did not answer that question. He stood there a moment longer. Then very quietly, "When that boy comes, and I believe now that he will come, I will hear him out." Mama Okafor turned back to her pot. She did not say anything, but she was smiling. And upstairs, pressed against the corridor wall where she had stopped to listen, Adaze closed her eyes and breathed slowly. She had not known about the land her father sold. She had not known about the third visit, the borrowed money, the motorcycle. She had only ever known her father as the man in the red cap at the head of the table. She had not known he was once the young man at the gate. He came on a Saturday. The kind of Saturday the village saves for important things. Bright sky, clean air, the smell of red earth after rain, someone always frying something nearby. A day that feels chosen. Emeka arrived in a small convoy. Not a white SUV, not a rented luxury car dressed up to perform wealth it did not have. 2 modest family vehicles, his brother Obina's car and a pickup truck borrowed from a cousin in Onitsha. Inside the cars, his brother, his mother, 2 paternal uncles, and a family friend who happened to be a quiet man with a law certificate. And in the truck, carefully arranged and secured, 1 healthy cow sourced from Farmer Ezike 3 streets away, its payment coming from the final church contract that had cleared 4 days earlier, right on time, like something arranged by a force larger than planning. 10 tubers of yam bundled in groups, 4 cartons of assorted drinks, 6 bottles of palm wine in clay pots wrapped in fresh raffia, fabric lengths for the family, packaged neatly, a velvet box containing jewelry for Mama Okafor, 2 pairs of shoes, and a white envelope. The village noticed within minutes. Word moved from compound to compound the way it always did in this village, not running, just flowing steadily, pulled forward by something irresistible. Auntie Nogozi, who had been sitting by her window shelling beans, saw the convoy and froze. The beans sat forgotten in her lap. She stared at the truck, at the cow, at the men in their clean traditional wear, and her mouth opened slowly without producing a sound. Sade was already calling Adeze. "Ada, he is here. He actually came. He brought things. I can see a cow from this road. Ada, go to your window now." Adeze did not go to the window. She sat on the edge of her bed with her hands flat on her knees, back straight, breathing carefully. Her heart was doing things she had no words for. Her room felt both very small and very wide at the same time. Emeka stepped out of the car. He wore a clean white native, simple, well-ironed, no excess decoration. His hands, usually dusty from the workshop, were clean today. His face carried the same calm it always carried. Not arrogance, not nervousness, just the settled look of a man who has done everything he could do and is now ready to stand before the result. His brother and uncles arranged themselves behind him in the formal way of men who understand the wake of the moment. Chief Okafor came out when he heard the gate. He looked at the truck, he looked at the cow, he looked at the men, then he looked at Emeka. Emeka held his gaze without flinching. He greeted formally in Igbo with full respect. "No, Dede. Anya biara no do. We have come in peace." Chief Okafor nodded once. His face was unreadable. Emeka stepped forward and handed over the white envelope. Chief Okafor opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten account sheet, clear and detailed. Every item on the list marked as either present, receipted, or pending with a date. And beneath the account sheet, a separate folded letter. He opened the letter. It said,
I am not a rich man, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I am not a lazy one either. I have worked for everything I have, and I will continue working for everything I want. Your daughter is the woman I want to build a life with. I cannot complete the full cash amount today. I have 740,000 naira of the 1 million. The remaining 260,000 I will complete within 6 months. I give you my word, and I give you the evidence of my character as collateral. I am not asking you to hand me your daughter today. I am only asking you for the chance to prove that I am worthy of her. Chief Okafor read the letter. Then he read it again. The compound was so quiet that the sound of the cow shifting its weight in the truck was audible. He folded the letter. He looked at Emeka for a long time, the way Malam Haruna had looked at him, the way his own father-in-law had once looked at him, the way life has a way of cycling back to its own lessons. Then Chief Okafor said, in a voice that was different from the voice he usually used for formal occasions, quieter, more human, "Nami, Bio, come inside." The compound exhaled. Auntie Ngozi pressed her hand to her chest. Obina behind Emeka closed his eyes briefly in private relief. And in her room, on the edge of her bed, Adeze heard the words carry through the walls of the house. She pressed her mouth over her mouth and cried the kind of tears that only come when something you have been holding very tightly for a very long time is finally allowed to be put down. But Chief Okafor had not given his final answer yet. The door was open, but it had not yet been walked through.
Chief Okafor sat at the head of his table one final time. But this time, there was no list in the center, no folded paper with 25 impossible items. What sat in the middle of the table was Emeka's letter, the handwritten one, slightly creased from being folded and unfolded several times over the past 3 days. He had read it 5 times since Saturday. He had not announced his decision to anyone. He had accepted the items formally, fed Emeka's family, exchanged the necessary courtesies, and sent them home with the traditional response, "We have heard you. We will give our answer in time." That was 3 days ago. Now it was Tuesday morning. The house was quiet. Mama Okafor brought him tea and sat across from him without being asked. She had been waiting for this moment without saying so. "You have been thinking," she said. "Yes. And?" Chief Okafor wrapped both hands around the mug. He was not a man built for apology or confession. That kind of pride lives deep, not because it is evil, but because it has been fed by years of being the one who decided things, the one who provided, the one who was right. Changing that is slow work. But Malam Haruna's words had not left him, and the memory of his younger self had returned, fully, without mercy. A young man on a motorcycle, a small store, borrowed money, a father-in-law who thought he was not enough. "I was afraid," he said. Mama Okafor looked at him. "Of what exactly?" "That she would choose a man like I was and suffer the way you suffered in those early years, when money was tight and the months were long and I could not always give you what you deserved." Mama Okafor was quiet. "I know," she said softly, "but did you ever ask yourself, do I regret those years?" She leaned forward slightly. "Because I don't. Those years are why I know who you are. Not the red cap, not the compound, not the title. You, the man who sold land for me, the man who came back 3 times when my father said no." She looked at him steadily. "That is the man that Adaeze also deserves to find." Chief Okafor looked at his wife for a long moment, the kind of looking that has 30 years behind it. Then he called Adaeze. She came and sat before him. She was composed. She had finished her crying days ago. Now she simply sat and looked at her father with clear, patient eyes. "That young man loves you," he said. "Yes, Papa, he does. He is not a rich man. No, but he is not a dishonest one, and he is not a lazy one." Chief Okafor nodded slowly. He picked up his pen. He pulled the original bride price list from beneath the letter. He crossed out the 1 million naira figure. He crossed out 4 other items. He looked at what remained, a reasonable list, the kind a man of honor could complete, the kind that said, "We value our daughter," without saying, "We are trying to break you." He folded it and held it out to Adaeze. "Tell him," Chief Okafor said, in the quiet voice of a man who has found his way back to himself, that a man who writes a letter like that has already paid the most important part of any bride price. Adaeze took the paper slowly. "What is the most important part?" Chief Okafor looked at his daughter the way parents look at their children when they finally see not the small person they once carried, but the full, complete human being standing before them. "Udi Madu," he said. "Character."
He stood, straightened his wrapper, and walked out of the room. Adaize sat with the folded paper in her lap for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and called Emeka. He answered on the first ring. "My father said yes," she said. Silence. Then, very softly, "Ada, don't you dare start crying, Emeka. I'm not crying. There is something in my eye." She laughed, the real laugh, the deep one that comes from somewhere that does not lie. And somewhere down the phone line, in a dusty workshop that smelled like sawdust and new wood, a man who had been patient for 2 years finally allowed himself to breathe. The moral lesson. A man who sets his price too high out of pride may end up with nothing left to protect. Chief Okafor's list was never really about tradition. It was about fear. And fear, when it dresses itself in pride, is one of the most common ways we block what is meant for the people we love. Emeka's lesson is simple. A man who truly wants something does not make excuses. He makes a plan, he works quietly, and he shows up. Adaize's lesson: your value is not decided by who is willing to pay the highest amount. It is decided by who is willing to do the most real work. And the lesson for everyone watching: the real dowry was never on that list. It was in the letter. It was in the patience. It was in a man who came back when most men would have walked away. Love does not always arrive in a white SUV. Sometimes it arrives in a borrowed pickup truck with a handwritten letter and hands still dusty from honest work. Onye huru ihe ochoro na aba oso ewehike. He who sees what he truly wants runs without ever getting tired.